Hey everyone. I never imagined I'd be the guy sitting alone, trying to untangle the knots of a life I thought I understood. For most of my adult years, I believed I had something stable, something rare. My name's Aaron. I'm 41. Been married for 15 years. Or at least, I thought I had been. We met in college, Elena and I. She was magnetic in the quietest way possible. The kind of woman who could sit silently across a room and still pull your entire attention toward her. She had this way of making you feel safe, like no matter what happened, she was your home. We built a life slowly, like two careful architects, planning every wall, every window, every laugh. 2 kids, a house on a cul-de-sac in Michigan, weekends filled with grocery runs and lazy Sunday breakfasts. Ours wasn't dramatic. I wouldn't say passionate in a movie sense, but it was steady. Solid. We never had explosive fights. More like small friction you expect when 2 people share everything. For years I was proud of that. But about a year ago, something changed. Subtle at first. So quiet you could convince yourself it was nothing. I guess that's where the story really starts. When the silence in our marriage stopped being peaceful and started sounding like absence. Let me tell you something, betrayal doesn't begin with fireworks. It begins with quiet. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe I was projecting stress from work, or the general fatigue of middle age onto her. But it kept scratching at me, the quiet shifts. The way Elena would go to bed a little earlier than usual, sometimes already asleep by the time I came up. How she started bringing her phone with her to the bathroom, then to the laundry room, then just everywhere. Not obvious, but just off enough to notice. She started locking her screen more often. Not immediately, just when I'd glance her way during dinner or when we'd be on the couch. I remember thinking how strange it was that I'd never even thought to know her passcode, not because I wanted to snoop, but because there had never been a reason to. We'd built our lives around trust. And then there was her laughter. She laughed differently. That sounds ridiculous, I know. But it was real. She laughed less with me and more at things on her phone. I'd ask what was so funny, and she'd shrug, saying it was just a meme or something from one of the moms in her yoga group. But I knew her laugh. I knew what kind of humor lit her up. It wasn't just the phone. It was the small shifts. She started going out more. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. A walk after dinner, a late grocery run she insisted she had to do alone, a wine night with some old high school friends I never got to meet. I didn't question it then. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. I thought maybe she was going through something. I asked her if she was okay. She always smiled in that tired way and said she was just tired or stressed. And maybe she was. Maybe I was too blind in my trust to see the fault line forming under my feet. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. But the heart has a way of editing reality when it wants to believe in love. It happened on a Thursday. Not the kind of day you'd expect your life to crack open. There was no storm, no strange sense in the air, no cinematic foreshadowing. Just a quiet, gray afternoon. Our youngest, Sophie, had forgotten her backpack at home. She's 7. The kind of kid who leaves trails of herself everywhere, crayons, socks, thoughts. So I grabbed the bag and drove it up to her school, thinking nothing of it. When I got there, I had to wait in the front office. While waiting, I overheard a conversation between 2 staff members, not gossip, just idle chatter about someone's recent weekend at the lake. And they mentioned Elena. I froze for a moment. They weren't saying anything scandalous, but it was the tone. One of them mentioned how Elena looked amazing for someone who's not with her husband, and chuckled, followed by a, "Well, I guess it's complicated, right?" I stood there, numb. I wasn't supposed to hear it. They didn't even know I was her husband. Something inside me split, quietly. When I got back to the car, I sat in the driver's seat with the engine running and stared out the windshield. My fingers were still wrapped around the steering wheel, but my mind was far away, somewhere between denial and dread. That night, I didn't say anything. I watched her make pasta, watched her laugh at something on her phone again, and I wondered how long I'd been living in a story someone else was writing behind my back. The real crack came later that weekend. I was doing our taxes, something I always did, and I noticed a withdrawal. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was odd. A hotel, 40 miles away. Not a chain, but one of those cozy boutique places couples go when they want to get away. It was listed under her card. 2 nights. One of them during the yoga retreat she said she'd gone to the month before. My throat went dry. I stared at that transaction like it could explain itself. As if the numbers would blink and rearrange into something harmless. But they didn't. They stayed there. Cold. Flat. True. That night, I copied the statement, printed it out, and tucked it into my sock drawer. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I knew something real had shifted. The guessing was over. Now came the search for truth. It took me 3 days to work up the nerve. 3 days of pretending, of watching her fold laundry, hum in the kitchen, kiss me on the cheek like we were still us. But it wasn't us anymore. I knew that now. I didn't plan it. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say. But one evening, while she was brushing her hair in the bedroom mirror, I stood behind her and asked, simply, what the hotel was for. Her hands froze mid-brush. Just for a second. Then she recovered, acted confused. Asked what I was talking about. I told her I saw the charge. That I knew she hadn't been at a yoga retreat. That I just needed her to tell me the truth. She didn't. Not right away. She deflected. Said it was a mistake. A booking error. Said maybe one of her friends had used her card, maybe it was a group thing, maybe I was overreacting. She never used the word sorry. She twisted it around, told me I had no right going through her finances. That I was paranoid. That I was always suspicious, always watching. She made it sound like I was the one who had created the problem, like my questions were the real betrayal. That moment, it didn't feel like I was talking to my wife. It felt like I was watching someone play her. Same voice, same face, but underneath, a stranger. Her anger was a shield. But it was too thin to hide behind. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She just got cold. Detached. As if she'd rehearsed this. That night I slept on the couch. Not because she told me to, but because I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. The worst part? There was still a small part of me hoping she'd walk downstairs, sit next to me, and confess. Not with lies or stories, just the truth. But she didn't. She went to sleep. Or pretended to. And I stayed up listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock, wondering what else she'd buried beneath our years together. I didn't recognize myself the next morning. There's a kind of emotional gravity that pulls you down after a blow like that, slow, dense, silent. You wake up with your stomach in your throat. Coffee tastes like ash. Your body moves, but there's no one really inside it. I called in sick to work. Couldn't face another human being. Couldn't imagine pretending to be normal while my insides felt like shattered glass. I sat in the garage for an hour. Just sat there, in the driver's seat of my car, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. What do you do when your partner, the person you built everything around, becomes a stranger overnight? You start questioning everything. Was any of it real? Did she ever love me the way I loved her? How long had I been living in a version of our marriage that only existed in my head? It's not just the betrayal of the body that hurts. It's the betrayal of narrative. Of memory. Of shared glances, family dinners, the way she used to squeeze my hand at movies. You start rewatching old moments, like they're security footage, scanning for signs, for cracks, for clues. I cried in the shower. I let the water run hot until my skin turned pink. And I wept into my hands, not the loud, cinematic kind of crying. No, it was quieter. Heavier. The kind that makes your lungs feel small and your chest feel empty. I felt humiliated. Not just because she'd lied, but because I hadn't seen it coming. Because I had trusted so deeply, so completely, that I'd left myself wide open. There's a special kind of loneliness in realizing that the person you shared a bed with every night has been living a secret life inches away from you. And yet, I still wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't ready to decide anything. I was broken. That's all I knew. After the breakdown came the silence. That hollow, cold stretch where time slows down and every hour feels padded in fog. But eventually, numbness gives way to something else. Not rage, not clarity, just need. The need to understand. That's when I started digging. Not in a frantic, movie-style hacking the mainframe kind of way. No. It was slow, methodical. Almost clinical. I needed answers to questions I didn't even know how to form. It started with her email. She'd used our shared laptop a few nights before and didn't log out. I didn't plan to look. I really didn't. But the cursor hovered, my breath tightened, and I clicked. It wasn't just a single affair. There were names. Conversations. Digital breadcrumbs that led nowhere and everywhere at once. One man, Eric, seemed to be the main one. Their messages were vague, but full of implication. Meeting points, inside jokes, the occasional photo. They used code names for each other. It was the banality of it that hurt more than anything. They talked about almond milk. About sneakers. About favorite songs. They sounded like a couple. I kept reading, unable to stop. Then I found the second email address. One I'd never seen before, under a username she'd used back in college. It was tied to an entire separate identity, one with a different profile photo, different contact lists. She had another life online. And that's when it started to click. This wasn't just about infidelity. This was about control. About secrets nested inside other secrets. I remembered something our oldest son said months ago. How? Mom's friend with the red car gave him gum at the park once. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now it haunted me. She'd managed to keep a whole part of herself hidden, not just from me, but from our children, our friends, our families. And I realized something brutal. I didn't know who Elena was. Not truly. Not fully. I had known a version. The wife. The mother. The woman who curled beside me at night. But that woman was only half the story. There's a moment when truth stops being a revelation and becomes a burden. Once I found the second email, the ground beneath me kept crumbling. Curiosity turned into obsession. I started piecing together timelines. Cross-referencing locations from her calendar with credit card charges. Phone records. Old photos. It was like building a puzzle, except the picture that emerged wasn't of the woman I married. I found out that Eric wasn't just some guy. He was a former coworker of hers from years ago. They'd reconnected at some alumni mixer. I remember her mentioning it. I remember telling her to go have fun. She had smiled and kissed me before heading out. That night was their beginning. He was married too. 2 kids. Lived in a neighboring town. I found their photos on social media, not of the 2 of them together, of course, but of the same places, the same days. A wine bar she claimed she visited with Carly. A bookstore she swore she just stumbled into. Every lie was layered so thinly over the truth that it almost held. Almost. But the cracks were now visible everywhere. Receipts tucked in coat pockets. A pair of earrings I didn't recognize. A playlist in her phone named Quiet Drives, full of songs we never listened to together. And the messages. I went back to those emails. I shouldn't have. But I did. There was one that chilled me. She'd written to him. Sometimes I feel more like myself when I'm with you than I ever did in my real life. Her real life. That was me. Our children. Our home. She had split herself in 2. One version she gave to us, stable, dependable, smiling. The other she reserved for him, passionate, reckless, alive. And I couldn't stop wondering, was I the mask? Or was he? That question haunted me. The further I dug, the less I understood. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a redefinition of reality. And I was slipping further down into it, losing myself in her shadows. It's strange how a house can start to feel like a museum overnight. Every room held echoes of a life I thought I understood: the smell of cinnamon in the kitchen from Saturday pancakes, the dent in the living room couch where she always curled up with a blanket, the photo of us in Venice above the fireplace. I used to love that photo. Her hair windblown, both of us laughing, holding gelato. Now I couldn't look at it without nausea rising in my chest. I started avoiding spaces she touched. The bathroom still smelled like her lotion. Our bed. I stopped sleeping there altogether. It felt contaminated. Every time I walked past the doorway, I imagined her texting him under the sheets beside me, her body facing the wall as her fingers typed out affection for someone else. The kids were the only thing that anchored me. But even that was complicated. I felt fake around them. Every hug I gave, every lunch I packed, it all felt like acting in a play where the stage had collapsed and the audience didn't notice. I started studying her when she wasn't looking. Not because I wanted to catch her again, I already had, but because I didn't understand how she could look so normal. How she could joke with the kids, water the plants, fold laundry, as if our entire life wasn't rotting beneath her feet. She didn't apologize. Not in words, not in gestures. She avoided the subject like it was a piece of gum stuck under the table. Pretended the confrontation hadn't happened. That scared me more than anything. I began to suspect this wasn't her first time. The smoothness of her lies. The way she managed to weaponize silence. This wasn't a woman caught in a mistake. This was someone who knew how to live a double life, and had probably done so before. I began pulling on threads. Old photos from years ago that didn't quite add up. Work trips that I hadn't questioned at the time. Gaps in stories. Names she mentioned only once. The realization hit me one night while staring at our wedding photo. I had no idea when it really started. Which meant I had no idea when it had ever been real. The deeper I went, the less I recognized anything. I didn't just question my wife, I questioned my past. Our past. Every anniversary. Every trip. Every mundane Tuesday that once felt safe and warm. I started cataloging my memories not for comfort, but for interrogation. What else was fabricated? What moments were real? One night, I pulled out our old photo albums. The physical ones, thick leather-bound books with Polaroids and ticket stubs taped to the pages. I sat on the floor of the basement surrounded by the evidence of our life. And for the first time, I saw something I had missed all along. In so many of those pictures, I was looking at her, smiling. She was looking at the camera. It was always me who looked smitten. Always me who leaned in. I started reading old emails between us, ones I'd saved out of nostalgia. Even back then, she was guarded. Clever with her words. Affectionate, yes, but always just enough. Never too much. Never vulnerable. And then came the real break. It happened when I accessed an old external drive. Years ago, we backed up our phones and devices to it before switching to cloud storage. I hadn't looked at it in nearly a decade. Inside was a folder. Labeled innocuously. Invoices. But it wasn't invoices. It was letters. Scanned pages. Dozens of them. From another man. Not Eric. Someone else. Older letters. From before we were married. Before I even met her. Love letters. Passionate. Intimate. And dated. One of them mentioned the move. Another referenced getting clean. Another mentioned a name I didn't recognize, Liam. I felt like the floor dropped from under me. Because Liam wasn't just anyone. I searched the name. The surname clicked immediately. He was her ex, or at least that's what she told me early in our relationship. She said he was a bad chapter in her life. She said she hadn't spoken to him in years. But these letters told a different story. He wasn't just a bad chapter. He was a presence. She had planned to leave everything for him at one point. The letters hinted at running away. Starting over. And then, the trail stopped. I didn't know what had ended it. But I knew this: I was the man she settled for. She had built a new life, with me, over the ashes of one I never knew existed. This wasn't just betrayal. It was reinvention. She hadn't just cheated on me with Eric. She had cheated the very idea of who I thought she was. The woman in my home was a collage of lies, crafted by necessity or habit or something darker. And I had no idea what else was waiting beneath the surface. There's a kind of clarity that comes after too many lies, not peace, not relief, but sharpness. Like light flooding into a room you didn't know was dark. And that light burned everything. I couldn't sleep. I kept going back to those letters, obsessing over every phrase. The move. Getting clean. Start over. Over and over, the name Liam. And then, one phrase that slipped past me the first time. I'll bring him with me if I have to. He'll never know. Him. I read it again. And again. The letter was dated 3 months before Elena and I first met. It didn't make sense, until it did. I opened an old folder of photos from when our first son, Caleb, was born. I compared his baby photos to mine. And then, in a cold tremor of curiosity, I searched the name. Liam Galloway. Found him. A small-time musician, now living in Idaho. Married. Public Instagram profile. I scrolled through it. And then my heart stopped. Caleb. A recent photo of Liam with his wife and 2 kids, and one of the boys looked like Caleb's twin. Not just similar, identical. Same eyes. Same bone structure. Same damn smile. I stared at that photo for a long time, every breath shallow. My hands were shaking. It hit me like a physical blow. My son was not my son. At least not biologically. The letter. The timeline. The resemblance. The cryptic phrase. He'll never know. Elena knew. She had always known. She had walked into my life with a child that wasn't mine and never told me. She let me raise him. Love him. Teach him to ride a bike, hold him through night fevers, kiss his forehead while he slept. She let me believe he was mine. And she knew the truth. The affair was a knife. But this was the blade twisted into bone. My son, the boy I'd given my name to, might never have been mine. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was anymore. The lies weren't just about sex. Or betrayal. They were foundational. They rewrote my entire identity. There's no blueprint for this kind of pain. No handbook for the moment you realize your life has been constructed out of someone else's intentions. For days I drifted. I functioned, fed the kids, went to work, answered emails, but none of it felt real. It was like watching myself from across the room, like I'd been evicted from my own body. I couldn't look at Caleb without feeling a violent wave of confusion and guilt. Not because of him. Never because of him. He was innocent. Beautiful. My son in every way that mattered, except for the blood he carried. And still, I couldn't unsee it. The resemblance to Liam. The echo in his features. The way he tilted his head when he was confused, something I'd always thought he picked up from me. I thought about confronting her. About storming in with the evidence, slamming the letters down, demanding a DNA test. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready to hear her say it. I wasn't ready for the confirmation. The final nail. And then came the guilt. Crushing, relentless guilt. Because despite it all, I still loved Caleb. Every memory with him was real. Every scraped knee I bandaged, every bedtime story, every whispered, "I love you." None of that was fake. But now, those moments were stained. Not by him, but by the deception that had wrapped itself around his existence from the start. And worse. I started questioning the love I gave. Did I love him because I believed he was mine? Or did I love him because he was mine, in the ways that matter? And could I keep loving him knowing the truth? Could I separate the boy from the betrayal? It was a descent into a place I didn't know I could reach. A silent implosion. No one knew. Not my friends. Not my coworkers. Not even my sister. Because how do you explain this kind of unraveling? How do you say, My wife cheated, yes, but the deeper wound is that she never told me the boy I love as my son was fathered by another man. It sounds like a headline. But to me, it was every breath. I reached a point where doing nothing was no longer an option. The silence had become corrosive. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I found myself standing in the hallway outside Caleb's bedroom at night, listening to the sound of his breathing, trying to convince myself that love could erase DNA. But the truth has a way of demanding its place. And mine had been buried too long. So I started writing it all down, not for her, not even for Caleb, but for me. Every detail. Every discovery. Every moment of doubt. I poured it out into pages, dozens of them. I wrote about the hotel charge. About Eric. About the fake yoga retreat. The second email account. The letters from Liam. The photos. And I wrote about Caleb. About the math, the timelines, the eerie resemblance. I didn't try to dress it up. I didn't try to soften the blow. It was a record of everything I had endured while pretending to live a normal life. When I finished, I printed it. Put it in a sealed envelope. And then I gave it to her. I didn't say anything. Just placed it on the kitchen table after dinner and walked away. She didn't open it immediately. But I knew when she had. The air shifted. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. Instead, she left the house. Took a walk, I guess. Or maybe she needed space to prepare whatever version of the truth she thought I'd accept. When she returned, she sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her face was unreadable. Pale. She admitted to it. All of it. Eric. Liam. The letters. The fact that she had known, or at least strongly suspected, that Caleb was Liam's. But she said she couldn't bear to give him up. That she saw the way I loved him and made the decision to let it be. She told herself love was enough. That maybe, over time, the lie would become truth. But it didn't. I didn't rage. I didn't break plates or punch walls. I just listened. My face was stone, my insides acid. And when she finished, she asked me the one question I wasn't ready for. She asked if I would still be his father. The moment stretched between us like a high wire. Because I didn't know. I truly didn't. That night felt like the final breath of something. Not just the marriage, that had already died in the quiet places long before, but the person I had been inside it. The man who believed. I sat alone for hours after she went to bed. Not crying. Not even thinking, really. Just existing. Numb. Hollowed out. The envelope still sat on the kitchen table, its pages red and now useless, like a loaded gun that had already been fired. She'd admitted everything. Not with courage, not with remorse. More like someone who finally exhaled after holding their breath for years. And now she had the audacity to ask me to remain a father to a child who, in her own words, might never have been mine. But here's the thing. I looked at Caleb the next morning, really looked at him, and it hit me, he is mine. Not by blood. But by choice. By every scraped knee, every Lego tower we built together, every. "Dad, watch this!" yelled from the backyard. I taught him how to read. I held him when his goldfish died. I was there when he was born. I cut the cord. I held him against my chest while he wailed into the world. So I made a decision. Not for her. For him. I told her we were done. I told her I would be filing for divorce. There was nothing to salvage. Not after this level of deceit, this tapestry of lies stitched across years. But I also told her Caleb stays with me. Maybe we'll do the test. Maybe we won't. But no matter what it says, he's my son. Because I'm the one who showed up. And I'll keep showing up. It wasn't a heroic choice. It didn't feel brave. It felt like the only thing that made any sense in a world that had turned inside out. Loving him wasn't a performance. It wasn't tied to her. It was mine. Entirely mine. And for once, I stopped needing permission to believe in something that was real. After the choice came the aftermath, slow, relentless, unforgiving. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Quietly. No courtroom drama, no mutual statements or counseling attempts. Just documents, a signature, and silence. She didn't fight it. That part hurt more than I expected. No resistance. No tears. Just a nod, like she'd been expecting it all along. She moved out shortly after. Took a few things, clothes, books, her yoga mat, a few framed pictures from the hallway. Left everything else, including the space she once filled. The kids were confused. Caleb especially. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. How could I? He's only 10. He doesn't need to carry the weight of adult sins. He just needs to know he's loved by me, always. And I do. Even when it stings. Even when I see Liam's face staring back at me through his. Love doesn't disappear just because the foundation cracks. Sometimes it clings to the debris. The neighborhood took notice. Whispers. Questions. One by one, people stopped making eye contact at the mailbox. That's fine. I wasn't interested in defending a story no one truly understood. What surprised me was the grief. Not for her, but for us. For the version of our life I used to believe in. For the holidays we faked. The Sunday mornings that now felt like carefully staged illusions. I missed the rhythm of our old life more than the person in it. But in that space, something new began to take root. Freedom. Freedom from wondering if I was enough. From performing stability. From chasing the ghost of a marriage that never really existed the way I thought it did. I began building something else. Something smaller. Quieter. Just me and the kids. We made pancakes on Saturdays. We painted the living room a different color. I bought a second-hand guitar and started playing again. Not to distract myself, but to return to myself. She took a lot from me. But not everything. Not the core. Not the part of me that still believes in love, just not the kind that depends on lies to survive. So here we are. The end of it, or maybe the beginning of something else entirely. I didn't share this story to cast blame, or to paint myself as some kind of victim saint. I'm far from perfect. I've made mistakes in our marriage, too, moments when I pulled away emotionally, when I was too distracted by work, too tired to listen. I'm not trying to excuse what she did. Just acknowledging the full picture. But even in a flawed marriage, betrayal is a different beast. It breaks something fundamental. It rewrites reality. And rebuilding yourself from the rubble takes more time than anyone ever tells you. What I've learned is this. Love isn't a shield. It doesn't make you immune to lies. It doesn't prevent someone from choosing to live a double life. But love, real love, is still worth it. It's worth giving. Even when it gets misused. Even when it costs you. Because love doesn't define you by the person you gave it to, it defines you by the courage it took to give it at all. If you're going through something like this, or if you ever do, here's what I'd say. Don't ignore your gut. Don't confuse silence for peace. And don't ever believe that staying in the dark is safer than facing the truth. It's not. The truth will hurt, it may destroy, but it will also set you free. I still have hard days. Days when the memory of her lies presses against my chest like a weight. But most days now, I wake up and I breathe. I make coffee. I pack lunches. I kiss my kids goodbye before school. And I'm proud of the life I'm building, even if it wasn't the one I planned. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves out there. And when you give your heart, give it fully. But keep your eyes open.